Thank you, friends. Shabbat shalom. Greetings to you all. I hope you all had a phenomenal first day of spring, first day of the year, and have been creating the year you want. This Sabbath is day 8 of 12, and it represents the 8th month of the year, the month of Scorpio. Remember, the ancient calendar was zodiac-based, and that's how the months were understood. And Scorpio was a day for the examination of what we hold on to emotionally, particularly the hurts we do not let go of, the intensity of the feelings of our lives. It is also a fantastic day cosmically for sexual energy. So have a fantastic time creating the second half of the year you want. My friends, we talked last week about sacrifices, and my young friend Noah realized he could stop trying to understand all the types and the reasons and the mechanics of this foreign concept, which seemed to be all that's talked about here. My friends, instead of trying to figure out what qualifies on the lists of sin, guilt, offense, grain, and other offerings, hey, I'll tell you right now, our understanding of that life is so far removed from it that trying to fully comprehend the differences can be a pretty hard thing to do. And Noah realized instead that sacrifice is about your setting right the cosmic damage that you have committed. The damage we do in our thoughts, words, and actions. And yes, my friends, that is what sacrifice was about. It was a mechanism for identifying guilt and obtaining forgiveness for it. We also talked about the 4 basic daily elements that would remind people of their sacred use and how we can reconnect to the magic and miracles of the universe when we use them. Fire, in ancient times, it had daily use. We notice it less today. But when you light a candle, strike the match, and be whisked back to the Sinai Epiphany, my friends, and witness again as God announces the 10 words. Blood, the life force of animal and human. When you eat meat or fowl or accidentally cut yourself and see the life force within coming out, think of the sacredness of life. Oil. When you make your salad or take an aromatherapy treatment, take a moment and anoint yourself as was done in holy ritual. The anointment of the king, the anointment of the priest. Water, wash your hands and notice the water pour over you. And cleanse yourself as man has cleansed himself from the beginning of time. We wash away the daily world and take ourselves back to the beginning of life, the primordial force of creation. You may want to make these part of your regular regimen, my friends, and reconnect to sacred and holy anytime you want to enter the tabernacle of your heart, of your soul. Friends, this week we are in a unique situation, a pretty good one actually. Much of this parsha is actually a repetition of things we heard. Someday when we're dreaming deep in love, not a lot to say, then we will remember things we said today. Well, maybe not quite, but I will always take the time to add Beatle lyrics. I am not going to talk a lot about the details contained in this week's parsha because next week, next Sabbath, is Passover. And so I want to talk a little about the parsha and then talk about Passover. Your preparation, how you might look at it, how you might do it a little differently than you have done it before, and how you can make a greater difference in the lives of everyone around you. Now, I heard a fantastic line the other day, and it really stuck in my mind. People hear what they see. Now, I thought about it, and it's called synesthesia. It's from the Greek together and sensation. And so it's an intermingling of senses. Now, apparently visual is the most dominant modality among people. And studies have found that this condition of synesthesia affects many artists who see colors when they hear certain music. Now, I tend to hear the sounds of the vibration of the energy I see. In fact, I hear music all the time. And as Bobby Darin sang, as long as I'm singing, then the world's all right and everything's swinging. As long as I'm singing my song. And I'm sure you all have the songs you like to sing. Friends, we are preparing for the Festival of Freedom. So sing your song and bring and engage your senses to your sacred practices. While you do, here we have God continuing his instructions to Moses. Tzav, command. Friends, Much of this parsha continues with the priestly rules we began, but remember, the book of Leviticus is a book of strict rules. This book does not contemplate morals or ethics. It is purely about ritual, and ritual is black and white. It is law. It is not interpretation, and that is why so many have a hard time with it. This is a book of instructions. Now, one of its Hebrew names, Torah Kohanim, could aptly be translated as priestly instructions. It emphasizes rules, such as that of the perpetual flame, that it is to be maintained. Its flame on the altar all night till morning, and the fire of the altar shall keep burning on in it. The eternal flame, or as we saw, the renewed flame, has become one of the most dominant of all visuals, to be seen in every sanctuary you enter, anywhere in the world. And in this book of priestly rites, we're also exposed to the idea of a contagion of holiness, symmetrical with the more common idea of a contagion of impurity. Objects that come in contact with consecrated substances, such as the grain offering, themselves become consecrated and can no longer be used for profane purposes. Coming in contact with holy makes you holy. The emphasis is simply on the ritual. The change of clothing to be worn in sacred zones. The sacred fire in the tabernacle does not go out. It holds place and time together. And we have this unification of space and time, and it brings symbol to life. Now, ultimately, we see Moses directs Aaron and his sons to eat the sacrificial meat at the entrance of the tent of meeting, a.k.a. the tabernacle, from which they're not permitted to depart for 7 days. On the 8th day, another series of sacrifices is pictured, but it is no longer Moses who performs them, but rather Aaron and his sons. Then Aaron blesses the people, and for the first time enters the tent of meeting alongside Moses. When they come out, they bless the people together. The glory of the Lord appears to the people. Divine fire comes and consumes the offering, and the people shout and fall to the ground. But just see what happens from Leviticus 8:10 to the end, my friends. In one session, we have the burnt offering, an installation offering, fire offering, elevation offering. And you wonder why there are so many and how you keep them apart in your mind. Moses bathes Aaron and his sons in water. And so we have our cleansing. He dresses them. He anoints them in oil. The dedication element. He slaughters the bull and ram and puts the blood on the horns, the altar, and the specific extremities of the priests. We have the demonstration of the sacredness of blood. And he burns the meat as an offering to God and lights the incense and invokes the divine use of fire. Here we have the interplay of senses in the process that we witness. There is the sight, sound, and tactility of the washing, the dressing and anointing, and the scent and taste of the burning and the incense. And all of these bring into play our own senses too. As we feel, we smell, we sense the process. We do not think of our senses anymore. We are overwhelmed in life. But the sacred steps of worship and commemoration bring our senses back into focus and remind us of the process of holiness. Now, this parsha ends with Aaron and his sons sitting for 7 days at the tabernacle's entrance, preparing for the climax that is coming in the next installment, building anticipation for the inauguration of the priesthood. And so if we follow the weekly cycle of readings of the Torah, we emulate what is happening in the text. We wait for 7 days to be sure that we get the connection. The next parsha is titled Shemini, 8th. And if we pay proper attention to this, we come to the story of the inauguration with anticipation. So we appreciate the story, and we appreciate the power of what goes wrong in the story. The catastrophe of Nadab and Abihu. And I'm sure you noticed, my friends, this parsha ends with one of the most important changes that has haunted man for all time. By handing the priestly functions and all future sacrifice to Aaron and his sons, suddenly the separation of church and state becomes embedded in a system of law, belief, ethics, and ritual. All ritual, all sacrifices, all priestly function becomes the province of Aaron and his family for all time. And the government of the people belongs to Moses. And just look how well that separation has done. It is still argued about. Now this year is different. That continuity will be 2 weeks away. You see, next week's Pesach, and the reading is Exodus 12:21, an interesting reading. And the following week is the traditional Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days, with its own reading. Allow yourselves, my friends, to be swept away in the process of holiness in all the things you do. You do most of them daily without thinking of it. So I want to think of it as you get ready for the holy day of Passover and perform your seders. We wash. We light candles. Some of us mark our doorposts with blood. And those that don't, picture it. And we eat foods that are different, invoking taste and scent. We make ourselves holy in the process, and we eat the bread of holiness, the bread of the priest, matzah, the egoless bread that does not rise. This is the oldest ritual in the religion. The calendar, the laws, the holy days all stem from this. This is the celebration of freedom. It defined a nation and a spirit, and well before your time, in fact, you'd probably have to go back to before Rabbinic Judaism. This was the most important holy day in the year, and I want to thank you for letting me share some of my thoughts with you. It is a time of celebration, so whatever you do, have some fun. It's a time for families to celebrate together, a time to teach your children about freedom. Teach your children well. Their fathers held it slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they fix, the one you'll know by. This is a holiday of freedom, of overcoming fear, of believing in yourself, of having faith in God and in self. And what better lesson can you teach? What better example can you be? Friends, for too many of us, our lives are filled with strife, turmoil, battle, and fear. Yes, we have happy too, but we fight too much. Do not make this a day of reading a book. Instead, come and sing a simple song of freedom. Sing it like you never did before. Let it fill the air. Tell the people everywhere. We, the people here, don't need a war. Over time, we've seen a certain amount of fun, frivolity, and modernization work its way, thankfully, into our observance of Passover. And one of the things that I so like is the modern songs injected. Now, one of my favorites, and I'm sure one of yours, as baseball season approaches, is that classic Take Me Out to the Seder. Take me out to the Seder with friends and family. Serve me some matzah and 4 cups of wine. Ask me 4 questions and we will be fine. And it's root for Elijah, that he will soon reappear. And let's hope that we'll meet once again next year. How cool is that? And what a night. I can't remember the last time the 2 most sacred days in the calendar lined up, Sabbath and Passover. You'd have to go back a while. And just as I talk about the twin festivals of light at Christmas and Hanukkah, we have a threesome here, because those aforementioned holy days are joined by the other great festival of freedom. You see, this year, this is also Good Friday. And this is not just good, it is great when the world comes together in love and in honoring freedom. Good Friday, a chance to be free from sin. Passover, a chance to be free from fear. Sabbath, a chance to cease, to be holy, and to be like God. I will take those anytime I can. The beginning of the year marks the time of promise and hope, and we are at the beginning of the spiritual year, recognized in so many cultures as the start of the year. It is our time to celebrate freedom. We have started with a clean slate, my friends. Let us keep it that way. In the Torah, this is called the Festival of Unleavened Bread, matzah. Now, many of you do not like matzah. And friends, that great book by Isaac Klein, A Guide to Jewish Religious Practice, a fabulous conservative manual of Judaism, actually says, and I got to tell you, I was somewhat stunned to see, it says the eating of matzah is an obligation only at the Seder and is optional during the rest of Pesach. And I'm sure many of you will be glad at that. Although the Torah does say in Exodus 12:19, on the 14th day of the month in the evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. We're also told, one of the great illusions of truth, we are told it is the bread of affliction. I cannot think of a Haggadah that you may read which does not say so. But that is not what the Torah says. It tells us that unleavened bread is the food of the priest. It is eaten with the meat of the sacrifices. Leaven is seen as something inappropriate for the holy realm. Perhaps because its power in the process of making bread rise is seen as the ego of man, which also rises. On Passover, my friends, all Israelites are invited to behave like priests, eating no leaven. It is the bread of holiness, and we are a holy nation to God. There's an age-old belief, my friends, that when an enemy seeks to destroy you, you need to feel as much hatred for him as he feels for you. Pretty well all of military history says this. But all of Jewish history says the contrary. The Jewish people have never had recourse to hatred, even in their struggles for survival. And so you have to see that Passover, in addition to being a story of freedom, is also a story of hope. On this evening, all questions are not only permitted, but invited. There are two sets of four which we tend to get lost in an examination of, as we see the traditional four questions. The Ma Nishtana, illustrated by four possible attitudes towards life. That of the wise son, who knows the question and asks it. That of the wicked son, who knows the question, but refuses to ask it. That of the simple son, who knows the question, but is indifferent to it. And finally, that of the ignorant son, who does not know the question, and therefore is unable to ask. But today, my friends, there is a fifth son, the one who chooses to be absent and has no interest in God, the Torah, the fight for freedom, and the Epiphany. And our thought should be turning more to this missing, this lost child, than any other. Focus on those lost children. They are our future. And we need to focus on other questions. We need to focus on the questions that try our lives. And in every generation, those questions are just a little different. But that is what makes it a perpetual observance. The Passover Seder is a time of symbols. The entire evening is composed of them. The table is built around them, with the Passover plate as the most well-known. Here's a picture of the traditional Passover plate, the one we are all used to seeing. I like to use this one, a star, containing 6 items, 1 in each corner. I like that better than the traditional round ones with 5. The entire story of the Haggadah is contained in the Seder plate, my friends. Everything on it symbolizes an aspect of Exodus. Zroa, the roasted shank bone of the lamb, the dominant sacrificial animal of the Torah. It evokes the Paschal lamb, which our forefathers offered to God and ate as the meal. Beitza, the boiled egg, whose roundness symbolizes the circle of life and death. Karpas, a green vegetable, usually parsley, the first fruit of the season of the earth, which we dip in salt water to remind us of our tears. Maror, a bitter herb to remind us of the bitterness of Egyptian bondage and slavery. And my 6th is matzah, the bread of affliction and hurry, which did not rise because we left so quickly. This tells us the entire story. This is tradition. Now, the Seder as we know it and practice it is primarily from after the Second Temple period and later. And this is one of the reasons that the Torah appears so silent on it. But friends, I think you should feel free to create your own unique celebration of freedom, combining what God instructs Moses with what tradition has formed. And tradition changes over time. For example, the traditional plate named above is from Second Temple times, just as the practice of eating reclining in the Roman tradition of eating on a triclinium, a dining couch, and which hints at the fourth of the 4 questions, has not been practiced in a very long time. Times change, And now, of course, you often see oranges as part of the Seder plate, and I welcome any and all changes that reflect your ability to share and teach freedom and keep the living history alive. Friends, what you need to realize is this evening, no matter how you follow it, is an evening of sensual invocation. We start with the washing. Some books say everyone does, and some say only the leader. But it is a sacred cleanse and creates holy space for you. We dip the parsley, the karpas, in salt water. We say something about spring in our tears, but it actually represents dipping hyssop in blood, which was used to mark the doorpost and lintels. And so we can recreate that immortal moment in time. The charos that could not really represent pyramid mortar, since the Israelites did not really build the pyramids, but it does represent mortar. It had a mystical formula comprised of the 3 roots and 7 fruits from the trees of the Garden of Eden, representing the tree of life. And as such, it represents the mortar that holds the universe together. And of course, that mortar, my friends, is love. The maror, or bitter herbs, reminding us of Egyptian slavery, is really a reminder that the name for Egypt in biblical times was Mitzrayim, the root of which is Mem Tsadi Resh, Metzir, which means to limit, to bind, to restrict, the things we do to ourselves to imprison ourselves in fear. And we eat the maror not just to remind us of the bitter past, but because we can survive bitterness. And from it comes the sweet taste of freedom and life. We are survivors. And friends, take a moment to remember and honor the Holocaust survivors. There is a danger in forgetting, in distancing ourselves too much. And the matzah is the bread of holiness and the priest, and allows us to be priest-like for the 7 days of holiness. And that, my friends, is a personal honoring of tradition. Friends, this was a unique event in man's history. It was the first event which showed God as the Redeemer from tyranny. It made God something to look to and not to fear. The conception of God as the Redeemer of the oppressed revolutionized the meaning and functions of religion and placed it at the service of the ethical impulses. And in the words of a contemporary theologian, what makes the Exodus from Egypt the pattern of redemption for all mankind is the interpretation of the prophet who sees God as a redeemer from tyranny. The God of Israel makes history the place where man progresses to freedom. The great scholar Rav Kook wrote about freedom and said that the difference between a slave and a free man is not only a difference in status, that is, that by a matter of chance one person is subject to another person and another person is not. We could find a wise bondman whose spirit is filled with freedom, and a free man who has the spirit of a slave. Authentic freedom is the exalted spirit to which a man and a people as a whole are elevated, so that one is faithful to his inner self, to the image of God that is within him. So friends, is this night different from all other nights? Well, the 4 manishtana questions that appear in pretty well all texts are different from those found in earlier versions of the Haggadah. The original manishtana seems to have included only 3 questions. On all other nights we do not dip herbs in any condiment. On this night we dip them twice. On all other nights we eat chametz and matzah. On this night only matzah. On all other nights we eat all kinds of herbs. On this night only bitter herbs. These 3 questions, my friends, correspond to the 3 main foods eaten at the Seder, the ones I spoke of. Motzi and Mor are in trouble with pharaohs, famines and locusts and slaves with wheelbarrows, matzah balls floating and eggshells that cling. These are a few of our Passover things. Friends, the story of the freedom from slavery is now a universal concept. The power of God in punishing the Egyptians with plagues is known by every child. For many, the recitation of the plagues is a favorite part. But did you notice they arrive in pairs, in increasing levels from inconvenience to destruction? Blood, dam, and frogs, tzfardeya, both involve water. Lice, kinim, and swarming creatures, arov, both arrive in hordes. Pestilence, dever, and boils, shechin, are diseases. Hail, barad, and locusts, arbeh, are blights from the sky that destroy crops, and darkness, choshech, and the death of the firstborn, makat bacharot, represent the final and ultimate punishment. But it goes further than that, my friends. The 10 plagues are presented as a counterpoint to creation. You see, the pairing of plagues also sees them organized into a division which plays off the tripartite description of creation in Genesis 1. Days 1 and 4 focus on the sky, days 2 and 5 on the water, days 3 and 6 on the land. Similarly, plagues 1 and 2 are about the waters, 4 and 5 are about the land, and 7 and 8 are about the sky. These lead up to the 9th plague, darkness, evocative of the world prior to the days of creation. Now the earth was empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And to further that Genesis association, the Torah emphasizes that the Egyptians were trapped by the darkness and unable to move for 3 days, whereas the Israelites had light in their homes and moved freely. A contrast that also recalls the first act of creation, in which God separated light from darkness. And of course the plagues culminate with the Egyptians drowning in the sea, conjuring up images of the flood, God's first undoing of creation. The Passover celebration commemorates an event which will probably symbolize for all time the essential meaning of freedom, namely freedom directed to a purpose. When Israel came forth from bondage, it was not simply to enjoy liberty, but to make liberty an instrument of service. These are the stories of freedom you should be telling. Your story is the story of freedom you should be telling. Haggadah does not mean read a book. Although the book we read from is called the Haggadah, it is a word that means to tell, and is derived from Exodus 13:8. V'Haggadah l'deber b'yom hahu, and thou shalt tell thy son. And we are told to tell the story of freedom as if we are telling about ourselves. Well, tell about yourself. Friends, newness and change is good. What are the important things? Is it reading a book many people dread or do not understand or do not care about? Counting the paragraphs until it is your turn? Or discussing, asking questions, remembering, sharing? You have an opportunity to demonstrate what steps you took to free yourself from your Mitzrayim. And in so doing, influencing all those around you to free themselves too. Now, having watched Annie get your gun the other night, all I can say is there's no Seder like your Seder. There's no Seder I know. Everything about it is halakhic. Nothing that the Torah won't allow. Listen how we read the whole Haggadah. It's all in Hebrew, because we know how. Well, most of us actually don't know how. Allow yourselves, my friends, to be swept away in the process of holiness in all these things you do. You do most of them daily without thinking of it, so think of it as you get ready for the holy day of Passover and perform your Seders. We wash, we light candles, some of us mark our doorposts with blood, and those that don't, picture it. And we eat foods that are different, invoking taste and scent and history and meaning. We make ourselves holy in the process, and we eat the bread of holiness. The bread of the priest, matzah, the egoless bread that does not rise. Friends, have a fantastic festival of flatbread and celebrate your freedom. Honor your tabernacle. Honor your dwelling place of God. Celebrate your life and free yourselves from fear. Love you all. Live free, be free, and honor your freedom. Be well, be happy, be blessed. Share and honor the light and all who live in the light and continue to shine. Continue to send everyone you know goodwill and love. Pray for peace and freedom for everyone, and end to terror and hatred. And remember, friends, we are a community. We learn together. We celebrate each other. We love each other. Thank you all. Love you. See you all next time. Have a fantastic time. Bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.